Have you ever wanted to say, try starting your own life and career YouTube channel? Please don't career boo YouTube anymore. It's that trend died a while ago. Or maybe you want to make a life altering decision to start that online business that TikTok videos have convinced you that all you need is a laptop, dropshipping, and AliExpress. Or maybe you're like me on a permanent vacation and all you want to do is slide into the DMs of your crush. Self doubt is sneaky and it can be a part of a smorgasbord of emotions and variables that have you stumbling out of bed instead of getting out of the bed. Keep listening, drink your water, and let's see if unpacking our experiences with self doubt shed some light onto how you too can tackle it and move from living your life to living your best life.
Hi, welcome to our first episode of This Is
Yay.
Fine, coming to you with the energy of Margaret Cho's unapologetic, unfazed, unbothered, full back tattoo.
Yes.
I'm DJ.
And I think I'll come to you in the energy of Kamala Harris's victory speech.
Yes.
Yes, I'm Ivor, and welcome to our show. What I like to do to navigate my emotions is to identify the physical expression of whatever I'm feeling at that moment, whatever is making me feel the multitude of sadness or whatever it is in that moment. And when it comes to self-doubt for me, it definitely starts as I'm unaware of the thought. I'm unaware that I'm doubting myself. I'm unaware that I'm questioning myself.
It's sneaky.
It is sneaky. That's why we call it sneaky. It's sliding into my DMs. I didn't even know it's there.
You don't even know how to block them.
If I'm not careful, then I wouldn't even know I'm doubting myself.
You're doubting. I think it's for me like a vicious cycle almost, where I don't know when or why it starts, but suddenly I'm in this cycle of like self-doubting thoughts like, oh, is that good enough though, or did you do enough, or is this gonna work, or like,
Yeah.
is this a good idea, should you be doing this, can you do this, like all of these different thoughts that are just like that snake that eats its own tail.
Yeah, it
It's
kind of
constantly, it's feeding itself and also like somehow still in existence.
Yeah.
Oh, why though?
I think it's because I think if you don't watch your thoughts, they tend to run away with
They
your
take over you.
consciousness.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point to start with, saying that watch your thoughts. And by watch, I don't mean judge, and just be like, oh, hey, in that moment, I doubted myself.
Yeah,
And so-
mindfulness.
Yeah, mindfulness. There we go.
Do you have any preferred like mindfulness techniques to
Well,
use?
I've been listening to Eckhart Tolle for years and years and years. I would definitely suggest listening to his book called The Power of Now.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is about mindfulness and being in the present moment.
Right.
And a very big part of what I took from that, and this is my own thing that I came up with, or that came to me as I was listening to it repeatedly for years, I still do to this year, is that I kind of pretend that there's a space or a place within my consciousness or my brain, or I imagine or make up this space, and I watch my thoughts coming out of that space. So I put two guards or two things that watch the thoughts, so that I can try and be conscious, be like, oh, hey, this thing that you're thinking right now, that's not fine.
That's interesting because I go with like sitting on like a riverbed or by a stream and I'm like watching the water go by, and that's my thoughts. And sometimes the current's a little stronger, sometimes it's slow. So like paying attention to your thoughts without necessarily judging yourself for having them, or just trying to be aware of like where you are, like where is your body right now, how are you feeling, are you tense in your shoulders, or are you, how is your breathing, like all of these different things that try to bring you into the current moment.
I really, really like that, because like you saying like your shoulders tense up and that kind of stuff, like if you don't know that you're in a spiral of self-doubt,
Yeah.
you can kind of identify like what your body, what you're feeling, by the tension in your body.
Right. And, a lot of times I don't even notice that I'm carrying all of this tension.
Ooh.
And then I start to kind of like check in with like, okay, so like going from lower body to like bringing it up to my head, like, where's the tension? Let's try to release. And it kind of helps to bring me back into myself and away from the self-doubt.
If my breathing is erratic,
Right.
that means my thoughts
Yeah.
are erratic. And so I slow my breathing down. And I think everyone can try this right now. It is impossible to focus on your breathing and think at the same time.
Oh, yeah, I've tried that.
And so I do have these moments, whether it's 10 seconds or 1 minute or whatever you can afford. Like, take those 10 seconds, just breathe, and you'd be surprised how much calmer you are. And then you can assess, oh, wait, I was thinking some bullshit, some internalized stuff that I don't have to give. I can acknowledge it, but I don't have to give it any power.
Yeah, no, I think one of my favorite quotes to come from Drag Race was, if it's not paying your rent, don't pay it no mind.
Ooh, RuPaul. Slay
RuPaul,
queen.
like, oh God, you have issues with fracking, but you were very motivational.
Very, very motivational. Yeah, I think that's a good way to identify it. Be aware. And honestly, I think that is the first step towards overcoming self-doubt.
Right, because you can't, try to challenge something that you don't know is there. So if you're aware that you are in a self-doubting space or like having those feelings, that's going to be the first step to like, how can you change the situation, or how can you change your approach or your perspective on that?
I like to use the example of going roller skating with Jane. So I had never done roller skating in my life, but what I had done was imagine that I would do it well. I would research, I would go on YouTube, I would imagine that this is the way my body is feeling, or the things that I might feel, like the imbalance, the weird disconnect, like I've never been on wheels before in that way. And so that removes a lot of the fear or the
Yeah,
self-doubt.
the nervousness and the kind of unknown factor.
Yeah. It's kind of like neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Like, you envision something and your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real or what's not.
Is that
And so
neuroplasticity, or is that manifesting?
I think it happens with, I think it's connected. Like, I'm not an expert on either of these things, but I do think it's connected, because once you imagine something, you are creating an image and a neural network or a neural awakening or something within your brain. And I think that is a good way to also imagine, be like, the next time that I'm doubting myself, I will be like, hey, stop that. Be kinder to yourself. Don't doubt yourself.
I like that.
I
like that.
just thought of it now.
So I think this is also a good time to think about, how is self-doubt intertwined, or how does it cause a lot of fear-based decisions? Because even in terms of like when I was doubting our podcast project, if I had listened to that doubt, or if I had gone along with it, then I think I might have called you the next day and been like, hey, I'm not really so sure about this anymore. And that would have been like a decision made out of fear, like fear that we would fail, or that it wouldn't be what I wanted it to be, or, that we wouldn't be good at this, which, I feel like we are pretty good at this.
I like that.
I like it. Yeah. So how does like self-doubt cause a lot of decisions that you might regret later on because you made them out of fear and not, and a reasonable kind of judgment about yourself or your abilities?
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that, like, having caution and a little bit of fear, like, it's valid. It's a valid emotion to have. Never invalidate what you're feeling.
It
but
can
also,
be helpful sometimes, or protective.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
I mean, it makes sense that you were scared, because we had barely known each other. We had met each other once, and I've been thinking about doing this for a very long time and been planning and getting my mind around it. And then just as I was like looking for a podcast partner, I was like, DJ. I like DJ's voice. She'd be great at this because, like, you have
Oh, thank
experience
you.
with therapy, right?
Yeah.
And as a kid, I have experience, but as a grown up, not so much. But I have been able to navigate through fear, through self doubt, through loss, through many things without the help of a therapist. And I am aware that there's a lot of people that can't do that, and even I have some shortcomings that I do need to see a therapist.
I mean, and the financial burden is so big. Mental health should be a part of like normal health insurance.
It really should.
People should have health insurance to begin with, but the fear really came in with just not being prepared, I think, and not having a very concrete idea of what we were going to do.
And then you
yeah, that just triggered this whole spiral of self-doubt.
exactly. So being aware of that, like when you're scared of something, are you cautious or are you doubting yourself?
Right.
Because making fear-based decisions helps feed self-doubt, and self-doubt can lead to self-pity, and then you're fearful again, and more self-doubt and more self-pity. It is important to recognize when you're scared and then question yourself. Am I doubting myself? Is my fear valid? Or am I just being cautious?
I think that's always the tricky question, because maybe maybe it starts as caution and then it gets blown out of proportion into self-doubt. You know, where do you kind of stop the train and say this far is okay, but anything beyond that I'm just doubting?
I guess being informed or becoming aware of your thoughts is honestly the first piece of light at the end of the tunnel. Just become aware of them.
Yeah.
All these things are a very, honestly, a difficult thing to unpack and break down very specifically. It's complex for every single person, and it's different from me as it is different for DJ. But being aware that the two of us both struggle with self-doubt and insecurities,
Deeply
and
struggle.
like every single millennial and their avocado toast.
Oh, and there are 500 houseplants.
Mm.
I think, I mean, I still struggle to do this, but it's kind of a structure that helps me, is trying to think of it as like, you're not going to get around it or you're not going to get over it. So just like sit with it for not however long, but try to limit yourself, sit with it, and then at the end, just brush it off. Like, okay, you had all of these self-doubting thoughts. Well, you're still going to do this thing.
I like that, because when you said like sit with it, I imagined another self, another
Yeah.
Ivor, sitting next to my self
Yeah.
that is here, and be like, talk to it and be like, yo, what the F is the problem?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. Like, imagine that you're holding like a pillow of your self-doubt and just kind of sit there with it and then let it go at the end.
it's almost like for me, like overcoming your ego, when you feel like a little bit too prideful, or you just feel like you're right all the time,
You're feeling
or
yourself a little bit too much.
it's too much.
You get yourself
Or
in trouble.
what I like specifically, and let's touch a bit on pop culture and Donald Trump, is like looking at the way that he's throwing a tantrum.
Oh my god, he needs to put on his big boy pants
So
and
honestly,
go home.
I think that there is a little 4-year-old kid inside of all of us that when we don't get our way, that part of our psyche like throws a tantrum.
It's just enraged.
And as an English teacher in Korea right now, I see kids throwing tantrums all the time. And the best thing to do is to just watch it. Don't react to it.
Yeah, just
look at it.
let it play itself out.
Let it play itself out.
And then when it's exhausted at the end, you're just like, all right, so we're going to do this thing now.
Yeah, it's kind of like an energy form that needs to get released.
Yeah.
And if you pay attention to it and try and fix it the whole time, like appease it,
If you're like entertaining it,
then
it keeps going.
it's kind of like you teach yourself, oh, self-doubt will get rewarded, and so I keep doing this to myself. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit confusing, but that's what I do.
So what would be your tip? Or how do you try to overcome self-doubt in your
I
life?
think what I constantly do is, if there is an emotion that drives me to the extreme of sadness or the extreme of happiness, I tend to be watchful and ask myself, why though? Like,
Why though?
why though? Like, is
But
it though?
why?
Because I don't like to believe in every thought that comes out of my head, because there's no evidence that that is true. And I like to watch myself the whole time. Um, and I think that has been a saving grace in many in situations. So for self-doubt, like when I'm saying I'm not good enough, or something that I struggle a lot with is being very short. And that's because people around me my whole life and be like, "Oh, you're short." I'm like, "Oh, no shit. No one
Oh,
has
I had no
ever
idea.
no one has ever said that. You're so original." Like, that's what I think. And be like, you know why people have insecurities? Because other people are having a problem with something that shouldn't be a problem. And then you develop an insecurity about something and you just start believing in the thoughts that you think.
I think that's an interesting point because in therapy, I brought up how I would have these very repetitive, continuous doubts about myself, or like, what am I doing? Or like, what am I going to do in 5 years? Blah, blah, blah. And my therapist just pointed out, like, who said that though?
I love that.
Like, you're having these thoughts about yourself and it feels like they come from you and that they're true. But when you dig a little bit, like just a little bit deeper, you're like, oh, who said that? Like, who is actually even thinking this about me? Why am I thinking it about myself?
Honestly, that is such, I don't know, that is such a great thing to say. Like, A, who said that though?
Yeah.
And B, like, you care less about what other people are thinking about you when you realize they don't
They
care
don't
about
care
you
about you. They're not
at
thinking
all.
about you.
Not at all. And I know some people can think that's a bit sad, but I take it in the space of like negativity.
I
Other
think it's
people
very
aren't thinking about you.
freeing.
It's very,
It's very freeing. Like, it's liberating to think like, oh yeah, you could probably like fall on your face and eat shit like walking down the street. And maybe in the moment someone's going to look over and be like, haha, she fell, but no one's going to be thinking about that like 10 hours later.
girl, even 30 minutes later.
Even
Like,
30 minutes, like
no
no one
one's.
cares. And yet like that self-doubt will still be haunting me, being like, "Oh, but like people think you're uncoordinated, people think you're dumb." Like no one
Yeah.
cares.
Well, you did use the example of falling into shit.
Yeah, that's my
No.
bad.
Um, yeah, but that's a very valid thing, is that people are living their own lives just like you are. People are going through the same motions, the same emotions. And much as we like to think that we are different and special and unique, the very base, the foundation of what we feel is still connected to other people. So you're living your life just trying to get, I don't know, get your bread. Everyone else is doing the same thing. No
Yeah.
one cares. I think that's a great way to wrap it up, is to just say that self-doubt is, be mindful, be aware, and that it's okay, and to watch your thoughts, and to remember that
It's not that deep.
it's really not that deep. Not that
Not
deep.
that deep.
It's not that deep. And thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Goodbye.